We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
With all the hullabaloo of Joe Manchin visiting the No Labels conference, a lot of people are wondering if there's a threat from a third party to the established two-party system, specifically what most people assume now based on polling, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump in 2024. But we're lucky to be joined once again by Liberty Nation's political columnist, Joe Schaefer, who has a different take on the matter. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Thank you, Mark.
So, Joe, you don't actually think that third parties, and let's be fair, historically third parties haven't had really any chance of a successful win, but they have worked to chip away leads in certain swing states that have allowed other people to get into power. But your position is that the biggest threat to, for example, a Joe Biden's continued presidency comes from the left.
Yeah, I'm not buying this no labels thing with Joe Manchin. He's in New Hampshire and they're saying, oh, the Biden administration is terrified. I don't think they're terrified. No Labels is an establishment organization. They're not rebelling against anything. The idea that Joe Lieberman, the former Connecticut senator,
Democrat senator, I might add,
who supported George W. Bush, is basically a neocon. The idea that he's rebelling against a swamp in the DC establishment is ludicrous. It's an absolute joke. So, Joe Biden has that establishment. They're in the tank for him. He represents them. He is the swamp. The swamp is not the threat to Joe Biden. The real threat to Joe Biden, I wrote an article about this some months ago, is on the left. And so I think an RFK Jr. is much more scarier than him. Not that he would necessarily take the nomination from him, because DNC is going to make sure that doesn't happen, but he's going to sap votes away from him. There are plenty of Americans out there who are Democrats who are just as opposed to the corruption in Washington as Trump supporters are, just in a different way. And I think a lot of these people are fed up with Joe Biden. They don't want to support Joe Biden. And RFK is much more attractive to them than a Joe Manchin or a Joe Lieberman. And that is the real threat to Joe Biden, losing the support of Democrats on the left who do not go along with, basically, it's a uniparty White House. They're very hawkish on foreign policy, which leftists are supposedly against. They're about entrenched politicians, careerist politicians. Leftists don't like that any more than populist leftists don't like that any more than the populist right. So there are so many reasons to oppose Joe Biden on the left, and there's really not any reason to oppose him if you're in the establishment swamp center.
Yeah, I think you might be onto something there, Joe. Specifically, I wanted to kind of ask your take on this segment that you're saying this is more a populist left. Now, we saw that in 2016, and they were going for Bernie Sanders, right? And also in 2020, and Bernie Sanders was, well, let's be fair, he was denied the nomination by the party establishment. And now you've got many of those people, I think there's a lot of crossover there, who are supporting RFK Jr. Now, I believe he's around 21% on early polling. It's kind of early to be saying that's where he'll end up on something, but 21% on early polling. But you've also got Cornel West, the author, philosopher, general Renaissance man, and socialist who was an advocate for Bernie Sanders in 16 and 20, a surrogate for him, some might say. So do you think that let's call them the Bernie bros, for lack of a better word, do you think that they are actually going to make the switch or stay at home? Or are they still more driven by the idea of keeping out what they consider the authoritarian right?
I think a Cornel West is too fringe even for the populist left. He'll sap some votes away from Biden, but those are people who probably were looking for an excuse not to support him. Like I said, someone like RFK is much more dangerous because he's got the Kennedy name. He's sort of got the footprint in acceptable camps, even though everything he is saying is unacceptable to the establishment. So that works out two ways for him. Cornel West is just an outlier, and outliers can hurt Joe Biden, but it's not. You're not going to seriously threaten him in any way for the nomination.
obviously not for the nominations. Cornel West is running. I believe he hasn't secured, but is hoping to run on the Green Party ticket. And we did see some damage done to Hillary Clinton by the Green Party ticket before. And I think there was a morning, I'm just doing this from memory, there was a Morning Consult poll that did a variation. And if there was a third contender, that third contender being Cornel West, they suggested that he might take 6% of the vote in a general election in 7 key swing states. And these are states that Joe Biden basically got by less than 1%, I think, or around 1%. Now, not all of that 6% would be from Democrats, but the majority of it would. And that could really scupper the Electoral College math, couldn't it?
Yeah, anywhere where he loses a demographic bits of support is going to hurt him because his margin for error is so small. He's so vastly unpopular, and so that's where the real fear, if there is in the Biden administration, comes from, is leaking support. So they're going to, hit at Trump. This is basically what they did in 2020. Trump is Satan. Trump is the devil. And they hope that ties them all in together. And there's reason to believe that Democrats have proven that if you can demonize the Republican opponent, saying this is the most important election ever, they will literally vote for anyone. They proved that in the Pennsylvania Senate race when they supported John Fetterman, who was so seriously plagued by health problems, he really couldn't talk in public. No responsible voter should have supported him. And yet, they're able to whip up their base and make it seem like an existential crisis if you don't support the Democrat. That is what they're going to do with Joe Biden again. I don't think it's going to work because people are so fed up with this administration. People on the populist left said, okay, we backed this guy in 2020. We wanted Bernie, but we went with this guy, and it's been miserable. We're not happy at all. I can't see how anyone on the populist left is ecstatic at the things Joe Biden has accomplished. Sending money to Ukraine, building up NATO. These are not things that drive home with the populist left. So he has a major problem to his left. He does not have a major problem to his center in the Potomac crowd. And so any threat to Joe Biden, whether it be third party or within the Democratic Party itself, is losing voters to his left. And I think it is a major threat to him.
Well, how do you think that'll work out pragmatically? Just in the last 30 seconds, Joe, how do you think that is going to work out as the primary season starts? Because it seems massively unlikely that Joe Biden won't get the nomination. I mean, unless a health issue causes him to step back, in which case the party will almost certainly support Kamala Harris just because she's fun to listen to, but you get great sound bites out of her. Not necessarily in support of her, but great sound bites nonetheless. So how would that work? Do you think there's any chance that RFK gets the nomination?
Well, I'm a big believer in the Gavin Newsom. They would love to push him in there.
President Gavin Newsom in waiting, right?
Absolutely. They realize Kamala is worse than Biden. She's an absolute disaster. She can't run. And I really believe that they understand just how much trouble they're in with Biden here. He's not going to make it. But again, we all thought this in 2020, and look how it worked out. So they were able to push him over the line then, and then they may try and do it again. But I really believe in their heart of hearts, they would love to have Gavin Newsom in there instead. But what I would like to stress above all is that the DNC calls these shots. The Democratic National Committee, more than the Republican National Committee, because Trump was able to triumph over them. The Democratic National Committee has done a great job squelching opponents to the candidates that they want to run for president. It used to be what the Republicans did in the good old days of the swamp with McCain and Bush and Romney. The Democrats are still able to do that. And that is the best thing that Joe Biden has going for him right now. And also Gavin Newsom, if they choose to. The DNC is going to select the nominee. Let's put it that way.
And we'll see who that turns out to be. Joe Schaefer, thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.